Into the Borderlands, one of the original D&D adventures, nostalgic for many of my subscribers who look back on the module fondly. It was based in Mystara, the known world, in the Borderlands between the Grand Duchy of Karamikos and the Emirate of Yalarum, hence its name, Into the Borderlands. It was created by Gary Gygax and Mike Carr, and published by Goodman Games. The module itself includes one of the most iconic adventure sites that is still spoken about by many today, the Caves of Chaos. A lot of you guys have asked me to make this video, so get the popcorn ready and hit that like button, because this is going to be really good. I've run this module before, albeit not as much as I would have liked, but my experience with the module and the setting is something that I look back at quite fondly. And why wouldn't I? Into the Borderlands does a lot of things right. There's a lot of factionalism between monsters that creates organic opportunities for sandbox and creative thinking. Adventure occurs at a variety of locations, urban, wilderness, and dungeons. And the world and region are so open that the players have so much freedom to determine their own path. I've always found that the best settings are the ones where the call to adventure is pretty clear, and there is vast opportunity to seize it. My focus for this video is B2, which centres around the keep itself and the Caves of Chaos. Many of you know me as a world builder, so let's talk about the region and its keep. It's pretty great. Sure, it misses out on some detail for NPCs and a few places of interest, but it's perfect for what it's supposed to be, which is a military stronghold. It's not too difficult to name NPCs and come up with some traits that will be appropriate for them. You can always check out my D30 Sandbox Companion video and throw some orc balls at the wall if you want to try and make some NPCs. Sure, it might take a little bit of time, but with the detail already provided by the module, a lot of the time that you would spend normally on things like world building won't be necessary, especially if you watch the rest of this video. The introduction to the module was clean. The Dungeon Master narrates the party as they approach the main gate of the keep, as suddenly the guards shout down at you to give your name and state your business. All along the wall you see curious faces peering down at you, eager to welcome new champions of lore, but ready with crossbow and polearm to give another sort of welcome to enemies. That introduction still gives me goosebumps and really sets into stone the impression of the place that you're arriving at. It tells the players that being chaotic within the walls will not be tolerated, because whilst many of the soldiers here aren't individually strong, as a group they are effective, and they can easily detain or dispatch a group of low-level troublemakers if it's needed. Having a place that your players respect typically makes that location a place your players will want to visit and will enjoy spending time at. The two overlap a lot, and that's why I find the keep is a great starting point for a campaign with newer players. The keep is a small town with several key buildings. Let's go through them. The first is a smithy that provides weapons and armour, a provisioner who sells adventuring equipment, a trader who deals in arms and weapons, alongside trade goods such as salt, spices, cloth, and furs. In my campaign, I had the trader also purchase treasure as a middleman to sell on to other buyers. This meant things like art objects, ancient coins, and artifacts too. As I dropped a couple of other adventures into the area of play, this felt pretty relevant. My group would make more money going to these buyers themselves, but my players appreciated the convenience of arriving back at the keep and just being able to offload their loot quickly and effectively to get that gold and silver that they desperately need. A lot of players are likely to avoid the loan bank, mainly because of its name, but it's important to represent it as a generalised bank, a place for the party to store their valuables, as it's quite possible they could get robbed or misplace their coin purse whilst adventuring. The Traveller's Inn is the place to be for learning rumours, as well as socialising, getting a hot meal, and a bed to sleep in. It has a bill of fare with all the menu items, and a section that includes some information on employing hirelings and the NPCs that frequent the establishment. The Guild House and the Chapel are the last two buildings open to adventurers upon arriving at the keep. The Guild House oversees the merchants and artisans who visit and trade within the keep, granting permissions and gaining tax revenue from those who earn a living within the walls. The chapel is home to the curate, a 5th level cleric, who has his own set of plate mail, a ring of protection, and a dope ass snake staff. I changed that for my campaign, but you can really have the curate be one of the most impressive NPCs in the keep for your party to meet earlier on, whilst you foreshadow other impressive figures that the party will meet later on in the adventure. The interesting thing about the keep is that pretty much everyone, including the shopkeepers, have their own weapons and armour. I do actually like that. It gives a real sense of the militaristic presence of this location. There's also a lot of information about what each building has in it in terms of wealth and treasure, just in case the thief of the group wants to go around stealing. Hopefully they won't though, as the locals don't take too kindly to those who break the law. There are a handful of plot points and story threads that you can use to weave together a basic story for your game. The castle and the keep, who's essentially the governor, will grant the party access into the Inner Bailey if the party is able to gain enough fame. From there, the party could be invited to a feast as stated in the book. If the party impresses using their charisma, the castellan might take a shine to them and give them a little bit more sway around the keep. There is also a jovial priest who is taking advantage of his stopover at the keep. He's robust and gregarious, happy to chat and drink with adventurers who visit him. He is also willing to join the adventurers with his 2 acolytes on a mission to the Caves of Chaos if they wish. Unfortunately, he's actually a cultist, and he will betray the party with his 2 acolytes in the most crucial encounter. I named him Father Basile in my adventure, and I had him love the meat pies that the Traveller's Inn freshly bakes. One of the players would constantly bring him these pies to gain information from him about the area and its monsters. He ended up not joining them on any of their adventures, as I preferred the idea of him being more of an informant, not a fighter. Also, whilst the party did suspect him of being dodgy, they had no proof of his affiliations with cultists, and therefore it was dead in the water. Moving on. The book includes a lovely little black and white map, detailing 2 forests, a wide river, and a region of marshy fens, along with 2 different caverns, the Caves of Chaos and the Cave of the Unknown. Travelling rate is 3 squares per hour, 1 square if you're searching. Walking in the forest is 2 squares per hour, and in the fens it's 1 square per hour. This distinction of speeds is easy for players to remember, and it's not hard to present a write-up for your players alongside the map when they're travelling if they need reminding. There are multiple zones of adventuring that your players can go towards. These are numbered 1 through 4, starting with the Mound of the Lizard Men, then the Spider's Lair, then the Raider's Camp, and the Mad Hermit. The book includes details on how to run these encounters, and I find this information alone is more than enough to get your inspiration going to further develop this if needed. The Mad Hermit is someone that a lot of my subscribers seems to love, but his place in the world is tentative at best. Making him a crazed villager who escaped captivity from the Caves of Chaos could be a really nice way of tying him into the story, making sense of his madness. Perhaps a certain group of cultists experimented on him, causing him to lose his mind. Maybe he whispers the name of a certain jovial priest when the player characters talk to him. He also comes with a pet lion, which makes him all the more dangerous to encounter if the party isn't careful. Adding him to a random encounter chart, whether it's only for him to stare at the party before running back into the bushes, is a really good way of getting him involved. He doesn't have to attack, and actually I think he shouldn't really attack to begin with. It says in the book that he's happy to chat with the party, then he'll try and kill them when their guard is down. That just seems a little bit too quick and hesitant, and I'd rather they encounter him several times and kind of build up a story about this guy with a variety of strange encounters. Maybe in one of them he throws his own shit at the player with the lowest charisma score. The guy's mad, so, represent him as such. It's pretty easy for you to add more content to these locations or have these short adventures lead on to bigger things. Let's get on to the meat of this adventure, the Caves of Chaos. I'm not going to go through the whole adventure, but the whole point is to explore and delve into the various caves found in the ravine. These caves have a whole lot of greenskins living on them. Kobolds, goblins, orcs, hobgoblins, bugbears and ogres. It's a real party. There's also a minotaur and a massive owlbear as well that reside in Cave G. The most impressive beast that is considered an apex predator in this adventure. The Minotaur is also pretty bad, if not worse. His very cave causes disorientation to player characters who enter from an enchantment that causes them to lose all sense of direction. There is no reference to what causes the enchantment. A safe bet is to replace the enchantment with toxic mushrooms that release spores into the air, causing the effect. A lot of dungeon masters who run this adventure will tell you to try and keep your players to the lower caves to begin with, as they are level appropriate, and once the party gains experience, they can move on to, bigger threats like the bugbears or the ogres. The different caves offer a lot of similar types of rooms, such as guard rooms. Guard rooms aren't a bad thing. They let us know that these monsters are organised, and they're easily able to strategise and call reinforcements if needed. Players will quickly learn that it's incredibly difficult to brute force these different caves, as some of them have their entrances trapped, or have sentries on guard, ready to spot adventurers as they enter. The end of this dungeon involves a group of evil cultists, led by a powerful priest who performs necromancy. Whilst this is cool and all, it's not really a strong story as there's very little direction or plot. And just because it's not strong doesn't mean that we can't make it strong. After all, the skeleton is there. I find a lot of players want a reason to adventure, not just to do it, if that makes sense. If you're to the contrary, that's fine, but I don't think it's a bad thing to let your players have motive and direction in a campaign, whether they are a new player or not. So let's improve and give this story direction. If you're newer to the channel and you've been enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing. It's completely free and it really helps grow the channel. Thanks guys. Now, let's revise the story of this adventure. This cult is a cult of death, who were forced into hiding long ago. It's a family cult, meaning generations of worshippers have been raised and indoctrinated with a skewed view of the world, that for them to be free, everyone else must kneel or die. The high priest of this cult is hell-bent on subjugating this region and plans to attack the keep, seeing it as the first step towards their goal of world domination and destruction. We already have a lot of information on the keep, including its defences and a map of the grounds, so why not use that in a siege scenario? For the cult to succeed at this plan, they have been taking many of the kidnapped merchants and travellers from the other caves, from the monsters, and performing dark rituals on them before adding them to their undead army once their usefulness has expired. This as well as raising any goblinoid and corpses the cult can find. The high priest and their servants are quick to put down dissenters, which has got some of the monstrous leaders afraid and almost in awe of their masters. The monsters follow the high priest because the priest is a powerful spellcaster who could make their head explode if they wanted to. Some of the other leaders may have been given unholy blessings by the priest, which gained their loyalty and has empowered them with enchantments like Bless or Divine Favour, to name a few. This is fun because it allows you as a DM to be creative. Maybe the leader of the orcs is partially undead and can only drop to 0 hit points and die if he is struck down with radiant magic or a sword that's been recently bathed in holy water. The high priest is using the various tribes of monsters to swell their ranks, offering the various monsters their fill of plunder once the keep falls, as long as they take part in the attack. This might actually make some of the factions loyal to the priest, seeing the high priest as some sort of prophet or god, leading the monsters from the caves into the great stronghold where they will be able to live like kings. The flip side to that is whilst the monsters and their leaders are aligned with the cultists, they aren't necessarily aligned with each other, and that means they typically bicker and fight amongst themselves as depicted in the book. But at least that explains why so many different monsters are able to live so close to one another in a relative state of peace. It's important that the priest does this as well to collect provisions and protect the rest of their flock, especially the non-combatant women and children who live within the caves too. To bring in the players, perhaps raids on the roads have become more frequent in recent months, and travellers are going missing. Maybe you start the campaign with the players being attacked by one of the factions on the roads, maybe the goblins. I've always liked a hot start in my campaign where the players get to break the ice with each other over killing some monsters. They get to learn what each other do, and they've automatically got something going for them once they arrive at the keep. We've killed a group of monsters! Is there a reward? As they lift a bag of goblin heads above their head. The players can find that the area is dangerous and people seem to go missing. This gives the players some indication and allows them to be proactive if they wish in whatever direction they want to push the story. But if you want to push the story towards the spider's nest, the bandits camp or something else, having flyers on the town's quest board can really direct the story and provide them with additional options, hence giving them agency. Start the campaign in spring, and have the High Priest's army attack the keep in winter unless the party can defeat the various tribes and eventually come knocking on the High Priest's door. You're probably wondering where the High Priest's undead army would be for that siege if the monsters in the caves of chaos were slain. Well, the people who have been turned to undead have been led by the acolytes to the Cave of the Unknown, where they wait in the dark for their master's arrival. The Cave of the Unknown is a section of the adventure module that is left open to the DM to homebrew, but it would make for a great staging area for the High Priest's forces. Remember, they're only going to be able to attack the keep in winter if the cult remains. And why winter? Well, undead don't feel the cold, so they could easily siege and attack the keep when it's snowing. The other monsters that could be involved in the attack don't really matter in the cult's eyes, but it's likely that they'd be able to fight with some reasonable effectiveness in the colder months, being used to the harsher living conditions. If the players decide to avoid the storyline or follow other adventure hooks in the area, you can come up with ways to show the evolution of the plot, by having guards return to the keep injured after being attacked on patrol, or low-level undead begin to appear wandering closer to the roads. This allows you to show that increased threat and danger of the caves without actually forcing your players to involve themselves in the content. Players like to feel like they're in control and can solve things by themselves, so let them. With this story idea, you need to have a natural progression of the year, giving your players a few weeks in game of downtime between adventures to recuperate, carouse, and work on other projects. As a rule of thumb, I'd have every 6 to 8 weeks of IRL play be a season, meaning that within 18 to 24 weeks, the party is going to have to fight. If you're running a small group, 3 or 4 players, maybe 4 to 6 weeks per season instead. I'm used to running for groups of 5 to 6, but I understand that larger groups obviously take longer to get things done, usually. In regards to the monsters, if any of them actually get successfully interrogated in their own language by the players, they might share dribs and drabs of information regarding the priest, referring to him as the Master or the Dark One. These nicknames are great because it adds a level of mystery, because it's unlikely that the priest would be going around telling the monsters that his name is Bob. We're not doing all this to make the players feel obligated to take part in the story. It's just that if they don't, there's no one to stop the High Priest from completing his aims. I'm a big believer that the world doesn't revolve around the players, and some things are going to happen whether the party are involved or not. It gives a sense of verisimilitude, and I really like that. If the party decides to do other adventures or doesn't make enough progress with the caves, they can always fight in the siege to defend the keep. I mean, how cool does that sound? It's unlikely that the keep will fall unless you want it to, or you're using wargame rules that leaves the prospect of defeat on the table. I personally would. I just think it's pretty interesting, and it's a bit of a win-win no matter what happens, as long as they find out that the keep is under siege and are able to arrive before it's taken. There are lots of ways to run a mass combat, and I'm sure many of you already have your own ways to do it. If you don't, I'll have a pop-up at the end of the video directing you guys to my mass combat rules, which I use and my players love. I was toying with the idea of making a video on actually defending the keep and how you could do it using my rules. If that's something that appeals to you guys, my subscribers, then let me know and it will be so. But the reality is, this variation to the original story allows the players to run through the adventure, reach a decent level, and stop a powerful priest from conquering the keep. This would make your adventures pretty famous enough to receive wealth and maybe even a title from a local ruler. If you're playing in Mystara, maybe Duke Stefan of Karamikos could make the party court lords and ladies for their service to the realm. Maybe one of them could be granted the keep on the Borderlands itself to protect for us as long as they live. From here you can have the players govern land, get taxes and move on to bigger, more dangerous adventures. Thank you for watching today's video all the way to the end. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below. I'm always trying to give you guys content that I think you'll like, and it's really reassuring when you guys let me know. Here are the videos I spoke about earlier in the video. If you haven't watched them yet, feel free to check them out. I'll see you guys all next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.